Welcome to NFL Nexus. You know, every single year, the NFL Draft is this huge spectacle of hope and a ton of speculation for us fans. We spend months glued to mock drafts, we debate prospects online, and we cross our fingers on draft night. But what if you could just trade all that speculation for science? What if you could see the draft not as a fan, but through the exact lens of a team's general manager? Well, today, we're not just predicting the Indianapolis Colts draft, we are literally reverse engineering their entire philosophy to build a blueprint for their future. For us fans, the draft is a total whirlwind, right? You're just bombarded with hot takes, conflicting reports, and like a dozen different experts telling you who your team should pick. It's an emotional roller coaster, and it's all driven by highlight reels and hearsay. But inside an NFL front office, all that chaos gets replaced with cold, hard data. It's a game of patterns, philosophies, and finding players who fit a very specific, almost scientific mold. So, what if you had access to that same blueprint? What if you could filter out all that noise and see the draft board through the eyes of the GM himself, Chris Ballard? That's exactly what we're going to do today.
Okay, let's dive into the core of this whole thing. We're calling it the Build a Ballard method. Now, this isn't about guessing or just going with our gut. It's about literally reverse engineering the Colts draft board based on years of their own decisions. We're looking at who they've picked, what those players did at the NFL Combine, and what traits they all seem to share. You see, Colts GM Chris Ballard is a firm believer that elite athleticism, the kind that's proven by testing numbers, translates to elite NFL play. It is his foundational belief. But this year, we're adding a new, absolutely critical layer. We're also factoring in the draft history of his top coaches, offensive guru Shane Steichen and defensive mastermind Lou Anarumo, to get the most precise picture we have ever had of the Colts draft DNA.
So we're going to start on the defensive side of the ball, and we're focusing on the absolute heartbeat of the defense, the linebackers. We're looking at the profile that Chris Ballard and his defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo consistently go after. And in their scheme, this isn't just about finding a guy who can make a tackle. No. It's about finding a versatile, hyper-athletic player who can cover, rush the passer, and basically control the entire middle of the field. It is a really demanding role that requires a very specific set of tools. So let's look at the players who actually built this blueprint.
When you look at their past selections, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. You start with a cornerstone pick like Shaquille Leonard back in 2018. The guy was a dominant game-wrecking force, a four-time All-Pro from a small school, South Carolina State, which tells you right away Ballard isn't afraid to find talent anywhere. Then you've got Bobby Okereke in 2019, who was like the textbook Ballard pick. He was the perfect archetype who checked every single athletic box we're about to talk about. But it gets even more interesting when you add in defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo's history from his time in Cincinnati. He drafted Jermaine Pratt, a former safety who converted to linebacker. That shows a clear preference for coverage skills and versatility. He also took Logan Wilson, who was a tackling and turnover machine in college. You put all these guys together, and you start to see the recipe for a modern NFL linebacker who can really thrive in space.
Okay, now this is where it gets really fascinating. We're going to use the data from all those past players to distill the noise of the NFL Combine down into a precise recipe. We're not just looking at their college highlights. We are analyzing their measurements, their 40-yard dash times, their vertical jumps, their agility scores. And listen, these aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. For the Colts, these are the non-negotiables. These are the barriers to entry to even get on their draft board at the linebacker spot. This is the code we're about to crack.
And here it is, the core of the blueprint. The Colts aren't just looking for good football players, they are looking for elite athletes who meet these specific, non-negotiable benchmarks. Let's break it down. First up, size. All four linebackers Ballard took before day 3 were over 230 pounds. They need guys who can hold up against the run. Next, they demand length. 6 of the 8 players we looked at had arms over 31.5 inches. That length isn't for show. It's a huge advantage for creating a wider tackling radius, shedding blocks, and getting your hands in passing lanes. Speed is critical. They want a 4.65 40 or better, so their linebackers can run with tight ends and running backs. The only one who missed that was Shaq Leonard, and he was reportedly sick when he ran. And finally, explosion and agility. The broad jump that measures lower body power, the burst to shoot a gap, and the agility drills, the 3-cone and shuttle. That's all about changing direction at high speed, which is absolutely crucial for covering shifty players in space. It's a formula for a defense just full of versatile, rangy playmakers.
So now we have our filter. We take that very precise blueprint, that strict set of athletic requirements we just laid out, and we apply it to this year's entire draft class. We are going to run all the eligible linebackers through our Build a Ballard system to see who makes the cut. Who is the next Bobby Okereke or Shaquille Leonard hiding out there in the 2026 class? Let's find out.
And this right here, this brilliantly illustrates the power of the model. After filtering hundreds of prospects, just a select few rise to the top. And at the very top is Anthony Hill Jr. out of Texas. He is by far and away the #1 fit. He doesn't just hit every single threshold we laid out, he does it with elite college production to back it up. And then you have these fascinating archetypes that Ballard just loves. Guys like Jaden Duggar, a former safety with these freakishly long 35-inch arms who has that coveted coverage background. Jake Golday, a converted edge rusher who brings pass rushing upside. Caleb Alamzor, a former tight end, which means he understands route concepts from the other side of the ball. And Jacob Rodriguez, a former quarterback, which points to an elite football IQ. Do you see the pattern here? These aren't just great athletes. A lot of them are position changers, a trait we know Ballard absolutely adores because it signals rare versatility and intelligence.
All right, let's flip the script. We're going to head over to the offensive side and see if the same principles apply to wide receivers. And this is where we bring in the heavy influence of head coach and offensive play caller Shane Steichen. You know, the guy known for his aggressive downfield passing attacks he ran for Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts. And as we're about to see, the philosophy shifts dramatically. It's no longer just about size and length. It becomes a pure, unadulterated need for speed and game-breaking explosiveness. Looking at the players drafted under both Ballard and Steichen, a totally different set of priorities emerges. Michael Pittman Jr. is a fascinating case. The data shows he's actually an athletic outlier who didn't meet the explosive thresholds we're going to see in a second, but his college production, his physicality, his polished skills were just too good to ignore. But since Steichen got involved, look at the picks. Alec Pierce, who's been one of the NFL's leaders in yards per reception, a true deep threat. Josh Downs, a shifty and explosive player who's become one of the league's best pure slot receivers. And of course, Steichen's huge pick in Philly, Devonta Smith, the Heisman winner they aggressively traded up for, a player defined by his uncanny ability to just separate from defenders. These guys tell a story of a team that wants to create explosive plays and just stretch the field.
So while the linebacker blueprint was all about building a wall with size and length, the receiver blueprint is all about creating lightning in a bottle. It's about twitch, that sudden explosive movement. It's about raw speed to take the top off a defense and force safeties to play deeper, which in turn opens up everything underneath for the running backs and tight ends. It's about having the jumping ability to go win those contested catches down the field. The data clearly shows they are willing to sacrifice a few inches in height or a few pounds in weight if the player is an elite tier athlete who can consistently get open and create big plays all on their own.
The numbers here are even stricter than they were for the linebackers. A 4.50 40-yard dash is the benchmark. A 38.5-inch vertical and a 129-inch broad jump are the standards for explosion. But the most crucial metric, the one that just screams Shane Steichen, is that last one, yards per route run versus man coverage. Okay, let's talk about why that is so important. It isn't just about running fast in a straight line on a track. It's a proven data-backed stat that measures a receiver's actual ability to win their one-on-one matchup, get open, and demand the football. It filters out the guys who just rack up stats on broken plays or against soft zone coverage. In the NFL, you have to beat man coverage to be a true #1 threat. And 3 of the 4 receivers picked with Steichen's influence were elite in this specific area in college. That's not a coincidence.
So just like we did with the linebackers, we take this new supercharged athletic blueprint and apply it to the entire 2026 receiver class. And when we apply these much stricter requirements for speed, for explosion, and for on-field separation, well, a completely different and very exciting list of names bubbles up to the top. These aren't just the top-ranked guys. These are the specific players who fit the mold of a dynamic, game-breaking playmaker for this offense.
This process identifies players who are practically built in a lab for this offense. At the top, you've got 2 perfect scores. Jacoby Lane from USC, the other receiver from that program who quietly aced every single test and could be an incredible value pick who creates separation with ease. Then there's Skylar Bell from UConn, who backed up his elite workouts with massive college production, showing he could be a reliable, high-volume target. You've got Bryce Lance from North Dakota State, the height-weight speed king of the class with just off-the-charts athletic scores who would give them a dominant physical mismatch on the outside. And finally, Kendrick Law from Kentucky, a player who fits the athletic profile and showed ambition by transferring from Alabama to get more playing time, a trait we know Ballard loves. This isn't just a list of the top-rated receivers, it's a curated list of the right receivers for the Indianapolis Colts. So when you see the 2 blueprints side by side like this, it becomes crystal clear. It is not one single rigid strategy, but 2 distinct, tailored approaches for each side of the ball. On defense, the philosophy is to build versatile, rangy defenders who can control the middle of the field using their size and length as weapons. But on offense, the philosophy is to acquire dynamic, game-breaking playmakers who can stress a defense to its breaking point with pure speed and explosion. It's a really smart, modern approach to team building. You have two different problems requiring two highly specific data-driven solutions. It just shows an adaptability and intelligence in their process that is fascinating to break down.
Okay, so what happens when the data is close? I mean, what if two linebackers both hit all the athletic thresholds? How does the team break the tie? Well, this is where the analytics meet the art of scouting. Beyond the core numbers, the data shows that Chris Ballard has a few tells, little bonus traits that can elevate one prospect over another. These are the tiebreakers that can make all the difference on draft day and separate a good fit from a great one.
And when you really dig into the details, these are the traits that matter. We've already talked about position changers, guys who move from QB or safety. This signals elite athleticism and a high football IQ, proving they can learn and adapt at a high level. Ballard also loves players who compete at the major all-star games like the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Bowl. And why is that? Because it shows they aren't afraid of competition, and they want to measure themselves against the very best prospects out there. Leadership, being a team captain, that's a huge plus. It shows they're respected in their own locker room and can be a culture setter. And finally, a trait that's becoming more common in this transfer portal era, transferring up. A player moving to a tougher conference shows ambition and a real desire to prove himself. These are the little details that complete the puzzle and often predict who gets that final call.
So, this Build-A-Ballard method really demystifies the draft, doesn't it? It trades all that speculation for a data-driven blueprint. It gives you the same tools and insights the front office uses to make its decisions. You've got the athletic thresholds, the key on field stats, and the bonus traits that act as tiebreakers. You can now see the draft board through their eyes. So it leaves us with one final question for you to think about. Now that you have the blueprint, who would you pick for the Colts? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. We read every single one. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you subscribe to our channel, NFL Nexus, and give this explainer a like. It really helps us out and lets us bring you more content just like this. And one last thing, if you're looking for a fun way to share your love of the game, we've created a series of football-themed coloring books, perfect for fans of all ages. You can find them through the link in the description or by scanning the QR code right there on your screen. Thanks for watching.